Thank you so much for staying with us. This is Meet the Media, and in this very special broadcast, we talk about faith and journalism. Juanita, I'm going to start with you. Tell us a little bit about your attitude towards faith, and what is your own faith?
Well, I'm a Muslim, and in South Africa, there's different manifestations of how Muslim you are, and I'm talking about from a South African perspective because I identify first as a South African, then as a Muslim, and so my manifestation of faith is really one that is, protected by the Constitution. It's one that I'm able to wear my faith, literally, and it's something that really I'm able to do quite comfortably. That's on one hand. But on the other hand, with my relationship with God, is a relationship that I find very personal. And I know that may be a contradiction because I wear it quite overtly, but I do believe that everyone's relationship with whatever God that it may be is a very personal relationship. And so I don't walk around trying to explain myself, or I don't see the need to explain myself to people. And I don't believe anyone should explain the way they show their belief system and faith in different ways.
Matuba, what about you? Just give us a sense of your commitments, whatever they are, in terms of your faith.
Well, I'm a Sangoma. I'm a trained Sangoma. And I grew up in a very dynamic family where you had Christianity and African religion. And I saw those two being embraced in a very impressive way. How my father comes from a staunch Christian Protestant kind of a background. My mom comes from a very traditionalist background. And I made a decision to follow African religion when I became independent. But I acknowledge and respect the Christian background that I have because I think it was trying to make me a good person in society. And what I'm trying to do now as a Sangoma, because when you talk about the Sangoma, you expect an old, ugly black woman.
I know, I'm about to run away off city.
You know, so somewhere in the heart, in the rural areas. But I'm one person that embraces my African religion in the most.
Now, Juanita, is quite interesting because you point to the Constitution. It does protect you, obviously, and rightly so, because our religious identity is a key part of how we negotiate the world, how we perform in the world, who we are in the world. But of course, at the same time, we also have this secular state. How does that work then? How does that play out for you guys professionally within the media environment? You are on the politics beat. Does that make it easy for you to remain deeply committed to your faith and have that personal relationship, and it doesn't follow you around literally in the workspace, or does it sometimes get murky?
So I think that if you prove yourself and your credibility to say that you are a journalist and you are a Muslim. So I am a journalist and I'm a Muslim. But when I'm a journalist, I'm a journalist. And that doesn't make me less of a journalist or more of a journalist. And so balancing it has never been a problem for me personally. But there are other issues that come to play. There are people that are a little uncomfortable with the way I look. But I've noticed and I've realized that, and you can perhaps identify to this as well, that if you're confident in who you are and you're confident in what you bring to the table, it becomes a lot easier to be proud, be Muslim,
Sure.
or Christian or whatever you are, and that really makes it a lot easier. But when it comes to journalism in itself, I think that it really has a kind of, I would like to think, a clean-cut way of how journalism should be done. And if you follow it to the prescriptions as it ought to, it won't be a little different to say, she's a Muslim journalist, therefore
Sure.
she's reporting in this way.
But at the same time, there's a certain stereotype about the newsroom and journalists, right? They are scruffy, they swear a lot, they drink a lot. There's a certain almost, I don't know, I wouldn't say hideous because I partake it in myself, but a certain commitment to a certain kind of hedonism at the same time. Matuba, is it easy for you with your belief set to negotiate the workplace as it has been, although it's been a journey for Juanita?
I don't think it's not easy at all. It's very different, especially in the type of setup that I'm in. I'm in a TV newsroom where you have a diverse group of people. And we come from different backgrounds and we approach stories differently. So our diary meeting are very interesting because my African religion, actually the things that happen in journalism or story, let's say in particular, would actually talk to my conscience. will talk to me on many different levels, talk to me as a Sangoma, talk to me actually as a human being. Because let's say...
So what has that meant in the practice of journalism? Let's say, for example, you're in a diary meeting. Are there things being proposed as potential stories or angles, either of you or the station or at the Sunday Times of the paper, where there's a conflict between perhaps what you know you have to do professionally and in terms of your actual beliefs?
I'll give you an example of something that's improving now, I see on eNCA. It was about showing black women crying. I had a problem with that. To me, in Ibungoma, practicing a Sangoma, we say, "Asketi balalelo." It means you must give dignity to everybody, no matter who they are, no matter their bloodline, you know? So I always had a problem with seeing poor black women being shown crying, grieving women and so forth, an AIDS patient being shown, you know, identified and so forth. Because poor people cannot negotiate when they see a journalist, especially sometimes, let me see.
Did you feel conflicted about voicing that discomfort if the source of the discomfort is partly your faith? And did you eventually speak out and articulate where
we did have a very serious debate about it. I held back a bit because the journalist concerned was a white journalist. And I didn't want to make it so much about race, but about dignity.
Absolutely. So that's how you negotiate.
Yeah.
What about you, Conita? I see you nodding there. Have you had similar awkwardnesses that you had to negotiate?
I think we're very complex beings as South Africans, considering our history and where we come from and our, you know, cultural heritage, as well as, you know, the racism factors that come in. So there are a lot of things that, you know, would make one uncomfortable, and, you know, it's okay for you. It's different realities, right? But when it comes to particularly religion, you know, there are certain things that are uncomfortable. For example, Muslim issues, for example. And by Muslim issues, I mean Middle East issues, right? And so you are immediately looked at, to be a person that you are the poster girl for Muslim problems. When I think the world has moved such a long way in that, you know, human rights violations are not Muslim issues, or terrorism is not, you know, Muslim, and I think I've seen that actually come a long way as well. But you know, there are certain you know, small nitty-gritties in the narratives that I would probably feel uncomfortable with, and that's also not only restricted to me being a Muslim, but also as a female. You know, sometimes in the tone of that could be sometimes, you know, sexist, and I think that. What really helps is to really confront things head on and say, I'm uncomfortable about this for A, B, and C reason. For example, referring to Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma as Jacob Zuma's ex-wife, that makes me feel really uncomfortable, because, you know, my culture and where I come, and as
presumably that particular discomfort can also be explained as part of the hideous patriarchy in society, right? And not unique to religion.
Absolutely, absolutely.
What I'm interested in is why you haven't brought this kind of insight, understanding, lived experience into your main work. I mean, if you look at your blog, for example, you write a lot about your faith, but a lot of your copy in print is about political material. And obviously that's what you get paid for, but at the same time, there's a lot of space for us to write what we like, opinion pieces, etc. Have you taken a conscious decision that there'll be a certain place digitally where you will have that conversation with yourself and your readers, but you won't necessarily have that, let's say, on the pages of the Sunday Times?
I think it's a lot easier. I know you do it quite well, where you share a lot of who you are in your professional space. I find that a little difficult. I find that when you have kind of the odds stacked against you, if you're trying really hard to sort of be taken seriously, where you actually need to forsake certain things about you, and you need to you know, push it aside, and you need to, especially in, for example, you know, age. We live in a very ageist society. You know, you would have a politician, I'm not speaking to a 20-year-old, and that's something you would have to deal with. There are issues of, so for me, you know, the factors that work against me, I kind of not sort of make it obvious in my professional setting, and rather keep that for, you know, a special place.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fascinating. Let's take, we'll come back to you after the break. I promise you, Matuba. Let's take a quick break. Absolutely fascinating, enjoying, as I hope you are as well, these personal reflections from journalists about the relationship between faith and negotiating the workplace. Please do stay with us.